Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Traitors Wrap-Up podcast. We are here today to talk to the first person murdered on Traitors Canada Season 2. Chris, how are you doing at this hour?
Oh, it's good to have that stress relieved of that episode for sure. But I am doing wonderful. How are you all doing today?
We're doing great. We're doing great, so far so good at the very least. Now, first question for you from myself and Scally is how familiar were you with the show Traitors before getting on, and had you watched any of the other seasons before joining?
Yeah, absolutely. So quite familiar with the Traitors actually. Started watching it last year once I got back from my 40-day Columbia Naked and Afraid challenge. I had a little bit of downtime to recover from injuries and popped up some streaming apps, and sure enough, there was Traitors. So began watching it, and right away I was like, this is something that I want to try out for. So I've watched all iterations. I've watched the UK, I've watched New Zealand, I've watched Australia, I've watched Canada, the US, name it, I've watched it. So it was such a blessing and a privilege to have been part of this amazing global phenomenon.
Nice. Yeah, I know we were definitely hoping to see more of you on it, but having checked out quite a few versions, having watched, were you coming in hoping to be a traitor or were you comfortable with your faithful spot?
I was completely open either way. My perfect scenario would have been go in there as a faithful and then eventually get recruited. That sets you up pretty good for that end game there. As you saw in the episode, I had no suspicion on me, so I think that probably would have been a good transition. But going into it, I was happy to either be faithful or a traitor, whatever the cards were dealt.
I think, Chris, there's one question on the minds of everybody here, and that is you volunteered to be put on death row in that first go ahead for the extra 10K. Walk us through your thought process there for volunteering for this spot.
Yeah, hindsight's 2020, isn't it? I made a little bit of a whoopsie. Having watched all of the different iterations and all the different versions of it, we have all seen challenges and missions where people are sticking their heads in with bugs or snakes or having to eat something weird or get buried in the dirt. And I thought, well, they're not going to get rid of a guy who's made a career of this, who's been on 3 different continents doing this, trying to survive. They're not going to get rid of me because I'm going to be able to do this without blinking an eye. Well, I was wrong. I overestimated myself on that one. And the goal was to get in there to have the traders recognize that, that I'm not gonna turn away from, holding snakes or eating tarantulas or anything along those lines. So they would keep me around to try and help win that little bit more to the prize pot and try and like dangle that carrot in front of me. But that would also open up more time for me to play the game and identify them too. So it was a little bit of that tug of war. It was a calculated risk, and without risk, there's no reward. So I gave somebody else a great reward, and I took a risk and fell on the sword for that one.
For
Did
sure. And
you go ahead, Scally?
yeah, I was gonna say it sounds like you almost were doing too good of a job in that making yourself seem like a valuable player. They identified you as a smart player early on, saying your opinion would hold a lot of weight. What do you think gave the traders that impression?
I have no idea because I would have thought me stepping forward for death row wasn't exactly the most intelligent of decisions. So I really don't know why they would have thought that I was going to be this hyper intelligent player when I'm sitting there going, yeah, sure, I'll take a 1 in 5 shot. So I don't really know why they kind of thought that. I knew that I was going to have some pretty good physical capabilities going in there. Strategically, I was aligning myself with other strong players like Kevin and Enoch, the whole Bros Coalition or whatever MJ called it. So I thought I had myself positioned quite well, but I have no idea where they thought that this influence would have come from, or this intelligent strategic mastermind that I was by stepping forward, because obviously it did not work out in my advantage on that one. So it was a feather in my cap. I'm definitely a very proud to take that, especially from somebody as strategically gifted as Netta, to hear that from her was definitely a nice little pat on the shoulder for that. But I didn't think that I had enough time to really establish myself as this influential or dominant player in the game at that point.
In that time that you were there, who were your prime suspects to be traitors?
Oh, I I tapped Netta and Michael John off the rip. Even before Traitors were selected, I had my eyes on him. Michael John, great guy. Like, don't get me wrong, he's a good dude, but he plays that part pretty well. He looks the traitor part. Cedric kind of made an offhand comment about it. But Michael John, he was pretty quiet. He was kind of reserved, and I did notice him preening his beard after the traitor selection happened, and he was a little bit more shifty, which is funny because he said the same thing about me being a little shifty and a little shady on that. So it was a bit of that tug of war. And Netta, going back to her just being so strategically sound and just well rounded when it comes to these games, I thought I'm going to keep an eye on her just in case. But those were kind of my two main suspects right off the jump. And then Cedric was just a loose cannon, just an amazing, amazing guy. So funny. We got along great. We were in the car going up to the manor together. But Cedric just kind of went zoo and just like ramped it right up. And I don't know if he thought he was in the amazing race and he was trying to make it to the finish line the quickest. I don't know what he was trying to do, but I had my eye on Ced as well.
Okay. Yeah, you mentioned Kevin and Enoch as two people you felt good about. Who else on the cast did you feel like you had established a pretty good relationship with early on?
Nick and Rebecca,
Okay.
actually. Nick and I, we didn't talk a whole lot up until the mission, same as Rebecca. We didn't really have a big bonding sort of moment until that mission sort of arose. And, Nick was just one of those guys that I thought was just such a down to earth and kind and just incredible human being that I thought, we could work and do some big damage together on. Rebecca, same deal, just such a sweetheart. She is formidable. I mean, Mary Jo was not wrong on that one. She was definitely a hurricane and a force to be reckoned with. But I felt real good about her. And then everybody else on death row too, Lauren and Dylan. I mean, we all kind of had that trauma bonding moment of, what do we do now? And we all clicked very, very well. Everybody in that cast was just incredible, and I was just such a fortunate person to have been a part of it, albeit for a very short time. I think I had 6 minutes in the manor, but overall it was just an incredible cast, and I'm just so thankful to have met and interacted with every single one of them.
So this challenge happens where there's cannonballs and there's math. And once this challenge was done, how did you feel like it's a two-parter. How did you feel like you did with helping with the mission? And then given that, who did you think from the shortlist, from the death row shortlist, was going to be the one to go that night?
As far as the mission goes itself, I thought I did quite well. You didn't see a whole lot of it out there, but I ended up pulling in 6 or 8 of those cannonballs myself, including like a last minute dash for cash there sort of thing.
Hmm.
So I thought I did kind of step forward pretty good and establish myself as a good physical asset to the entire faithful and traitor environment, I guess you can say, the ecosystem of the manor.
Hmm.
But also throughout that mission too, Mary Jo, who's sweet, sweet as pie, she was having a bit of a hard time about the halfway mark, maybe the 3/4 mark, carrying the cannonballs. And there was a moment where I actually slowed down my pace and actually ran beside her and walked with her and encouraged her and cheered her on. So I thought I kind of established myself as just that team sort of, let's go, we're in this together, rock and roll. And if I need to get down and dirty and run through the woods, that's what I do. So it was just one of those things that I thought I established myself pretty good. And as far as who I thought was going to be on the chopping block, and I think a lot of people maybe echoed this sentiment. And I love the dude, and I don't want to throw him under the bus, but I thought Dylan was going. Just after his round table declaration, right? Looking back at it now and rewatching it, strategic for sure. Like that was a smart move. because he did paint that target on himself, and that did maybe in the hindsight being 2020 did maybe keep him safe. But we all thought Dylan was going to get pegged, and if he wasn't going to get taken out, he was probably going to be a traitor. So I think there's a lot of eyes on Dylan on that one.
Yeah. Now, if you were to go back and do this all differently, or do it all again, what would you do differently?
I wouldn't step forward.
Well, that
I'd maybe play a little bit smarter. If I had no suspicion on me, maybe I'll get a little bit more spicy in the manner, maybe draw some attention or something like that. But if I was to go back in, and if I did have that opportunity, one, I would be forever grateful for sure, because I do feel like I have some unfinished business to attend to. But I definitely would continue to just be authentically me. Who you saw on the screen, that's Chris. That's Christopher James. It's, that fun, like Dylan said, the nicest guy in the world, even though 20 minutes earlier at the round table or at the mission, everybody said that he was the biggest liar. So I don't really know how to process that, if he was lying when he called me the nicest guy in the world, or what. I don't really know how to process that one, but I would probably just continue to be Chris. And I know going into it, having 3 reality shows, global, that have been watched, I knew that there was probably going to be a little bit of a target on my back, and I knew that there was going to be a bit of an uphill climb. But outside of stepping forward on death row, I wouldn't do anything different.
Um, okay, I was about to ask you something, and then it completely. Oh, there we go. It's back. So you have done other shows. This was not your first rodeo on television. What was there about the Traitors coming in that you may have expected to be different? As in, was there something that shocked you, and how different it was to what your expectations were coming in?
The fact I got to wear pants and I didn't have to go get my own food. I mean, that was a big victory on that one. Yeah, big win, big win. I didn't have
Which
to worry
Traitors were
about
you watching?
yeah, I think I downloaded the wrong episode. Yeah, to me, looking at the Traitors versus the other shows that I've been on, it's still a survival show. It's still a challenge. It's still trying to make it to the end and survive. And I've been on 3 continents with 1 item, surviving the elements. I mean, I've taken out venomous snakes. I've poked hyenas in the face. I've had close encounters with hippos. I've had all of these sort of experiences, but I've never had that social survival experiment. And it was something that I wanted to go on and say, okay, I know I could tie knots and, you know, catch catfish with my bare hands and things along those lines. But let's see how I do in a civilized survival sort of scenario. And not well, because that was the least amount of time I've spent in any survival situation. So now we know.
Yeah. Now, factoring in those venomous snakes and those hippos versus the Michael Johns, Kira's, and Netta's, what was the hardest show to do?
Physically, Naked and Afraid.
There we go.
Without a doubt, physically, it was Naked and Afraid. I ended up with dengue. I've had a blood infection where I could have lost my foot. I've had parasites. I mean, the physical risk on Naked and Afraid is huge. And I've done 3 of them now in Mexico, Africa, and Colombia. So that was definitely the physical side. But the mental turmoil on the Traitors and just not knowing who to trust, that definitely takes a toll on you. And I mean, with Naked and Afraid and the other shows that I've been on, I trust my skills, I trust my abilities, and I have no other choice but to trust my partner, because we're both in this together. Whereas on the Traitors, like, it is cutthroat. I mean, everybody wants to make it to the end, but nobody wants to split a pot. So it does end up turning it into a little bit more of that stronger, or the fight of the fittest, I guess, on that one. And I may have been one of the fittest there, but I definitely didn't have that fight left in me, I guess.
Chris, I have one more question for you. You mentioned you are a big fan of the franchise. You've watched a lot of the seasons, all the seasons. What was your favorite season of the Traitors that you've seen?
Season 2 of Canada. I mean, this is hands down. This season's going to be immaculate. I can tell you this right off the jump. There's going to be things that nobody has seen before on any version of the Traitors. This season is going to be absolutely insane. So for everybody watching right now, stay tuned, set your PVRs, download Crave, because this is one wild ride.
Huge endorsement, and I can't wait to see what it gives us. Scally, did you have any other questions?
No, I'm just excited. I feel like it's been a really strong 2 episodes so far. I'm sad, Chris, that you will not be there for the duration, but I'm excited to see how it plays out.
Yeah, me as well. I wish I was still in there and riding that faithful train all the way to the end. But unfortunately, the chips fell where they fell. And if I get an opportunity to go back in there, it'll be different, but not different. You'll still get the same Christopher James.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Chris. We
I
hope
appreciate it.
to see you on our TV soon. Take care.
I hope you do as well. So
hello, everybody, and welcome back to the We Know the Traitors podcast here. We are ready to talk with the first person, unfortunately banished from the Traitors Canada Season 2. Rebecca is here with us. Rebecca, how are you doing at this hour?
I am not so bad at this hour. How are you?
We're good. Sad to see you here with us. Not gonna lie, I really thought you could have potentially had some longevity in this game, but it seems like a lot went wrong, unfortunately, and it had little to do with you from what we saw, and more to do with everybody else's suspicions.
Thank you. I couldn't agree more. I feel as though I did nothing wrong, so not really sure why I'm here right now.
Yeah, sometimes it just happens to be the luck of the draw, especially I feel like early on. But as much as we wish it was not yet in the season, and we are excited to talk to you. And I wanted to check in.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Before you actually got to the manor, how familiar were you with the Traitors? Had you watched other seasons or?
So before I was cast, I actually had no idea about the show at all. So then once I was cast on it, I actually went and watched everything that I could possibly find. So I've watched the first season of Canada. I watched a couple of seasons of the US. I watched a couple of seasons of UK, Australia. Like I've watched as much as possible as I could before I went. And now I'm just a fan.
So we did see that this last episode opened up with you getting to breakfast first, one of the first to be able to attack the lovely spread they put out there. Can you walk us through what that conversation with Kirkland was like at the very beginning? To start your morning, not with coffee, but with a confrontation almost.
Well, it certainly would wake you up. I'll tell you that for sure. I was definitely not prepared for that. I'm not gonna lie. I think I held my cool pretty well, and I was just like chill about it. But if I said that my heart wasn't in my throat and I wasn't super duper confused, that would be a lie, because that was exactly how I felt.
And so before that point, you had not really heard your name so much?
Well, I'd heard that it's like Cedric was talking about it, obviously. Like that was pretty like ongoing the entire day before. So that wasn't really surprising to me. So when he initially said that, I kind of was just assuming he was talking about Cedric and like the people Cedric was talking to. But now watching the episode, obviously, I see that there was a little bit more chatter about my name. So that was really weird.
So we saw after breakfast, Kirkland decides we need to talk a little deeper. Y'all having this one-on-one, and then Dylan walks in. Can you just run us through what the vibe was when Dylan comes in and invites himself to this conversation?
It was definitely like mildly awkward, but at the same time, like not super unexpected. Like that's just kind of who Dylan is. And it wasn't surprising. So like he was welcomed once he sat down and we got to continue the conversation a little bit. Now I don't know where it would have gone had he not been there. That being said, like I don't know if I could have maybe convinced Kirkland otherwise had that conversation been more private. But I don't know. I wasn't like upset about it or anything by any means. It was kind of funny.
So you mentioned that you knew that likely Cedric was throwing your name around early on. What was it like playing with, as he called himself, Hurricane Cedric?
He's exactly that, but like he was always like bubbly and stuff, like even before Traitors were picked. But then once the Traitors were picked, he just became so like chaotic. Like his energy was just like so misplaced. So like at first it could have been probably really beneficial to have somebody so positive and like a comedian and stuff around, but then it just got a little out of hand. So it wasn't like awful because I, as he said, wasn't really talking to him as much anymore. So I didn't really have to be subjected to the hurricane quite as much as some other people might have. But yeah, sitting right next to him at that round table was hot.
So sounds like avoiding him was avoiding the hurricane. Can you tell us a little bit about the people that you were more so not avoiding and close to? I feel like the show really does highlight your relationship with Kira. Can you speak to that as well?
Yeah, me and Kira were pretty close, like from day one. Like even before like we were like really filming and stuff, we were kind of like just in a similar room and kind of like side-eyeing at each other, being like, hello, I like you. So we kind of just had like a connection pretty immediately. But I don't know, I then once we met all like everybody and all of us kind of got to know each other, there was definitely like a girl squad as they were calling it, or I can't remember what everybody was referring it to, but there was definitely a little name everyone had for us. So it was like me, Kira, Lauren, Jasmine, Trina, like Netta, just anybody, all the girls were kind of like sticking up for each other and became a little close. So it was tough to go home, especially having that friend group.
Yeah. When Kira's going so far as to saying like she's your proxy, she will put her life on the line in the game to keep you in this game. Did that shock you at
Mhm.
all, or would you have reacted the same if her name came up?
I definitely would have reacted the same had her name come up for sure. And like I did actually kind of know that she was doing that. Like every time we were having conversations with each other, she was like, this was said earlier and I had your back. I keep telling everybody you're my 100, you're my 100. And I definitely was saying the same thing about her. She was my 100%. Like I was totally all in on Kira. So, and like even to this day now, knowing that she's a traitor, I'm still all in on Kira. I do love her.
So to speak on that, who were you suspicious of to be the traitors? Outside of obviously Cedric being the one that's pushing your name out, did you have any inklings?
The only other person that I was like kind of side eyeing was Michael John. And I don't think I was the only one in that position. I'm sure that we're going to see that coming up soon. But he was super like defensive and just like uncomfortable and he seemed like he was uncomfortable in his role and it was really obvious. Now like I hadn't spoke on it much at that point because I was trying to you know deal with the whole Cedric hurricane thing. So but yeah, had I had more time there, I think I probably would have worked in on Michael John a little bit more.
So in the world where you do have more time there, you're coming in for a second time. What do you do differently? What would you tell someone that might find themselves in your position early on in the game?
Like I could give advice. I don't know if I could take the advice that I give because I would tell
Relatable.
people to like talk so much less and like, you know, play more of a quiet role. Like you can see some other people doing, like you can see Netta doing. She's definitely being quieter amongst the crowds. So if I had advice, I would tell people to try and be on the quieter side, but definitely don't be silent because people are going to be looking at you more if you're silent too. You got to be throwing some names out, but not 8 names, you know? So I don't know if I could take that advice because I cannot keep my trap shut, but I would love to be able to.
Let's talk about this last mission that you participated in with the Trojan horse. Now, in question 3, your name is one of the lovely options for the answer to who tells the most lies. And we do see a moment where your name is yelled out loud. How did it feel in the moment to basically find out what some people may be thinking about you?
I could not believe that because up until that point, I really was of the belief that like it was only Cedric that didn't vibe with me. And so when Mary Jo said my name, I literally like my neck snapped over, as you can see me say in my confessional. And I was like, lies. You can literally hear me go lies because I was like, I have not lied once in this game, and especially not to you. So like, where did that come from? That was yeah, that was shocking.
Now, would you have been like to be put in the position that you'd be lying a little more? Would you have preferred to have been a traitor, or were you hoping to be a faithful coming in?
I actually asked to be a faithful because I was genuinely like, okay, this is so much pressure as it is. Like, and you don't really know until you're there, but like being in that manner is like so much pressure as it is. And like knowing that you're gonna have to like really judge people and like, you know, like be sly as it is having had been a traitor would have been like an extra layer on that. And I was like, I don't know if I'm ready for all that on my first reality TV show. Like that's kind of a lot.
Was there anybody that voted for you that you were shocked to see they put your name on chalk there?
Kevin was the first vote for me, actually, and I was a little surprised by that because I hadn't realized he was even thinking of me by that point. So that was a little surprising because, you know, he was like the first person I met, as you can see in the cars, you know, we were driving together. So I was like, oh, that kind of sucks. Like, it's not that I was like super, super surprised that because people were obviously talking about me and I was realizing that in the moment, but it was more just like, ah, Kev.
Yeah, as Kevin said, though, he was really wary of this girl power alliance. Do you think he was right to be wary of it so early in the game?
Well, now watching it and knowing that Kira is a traitor, that probably was the right move on his behalf because, like, we were a strong group and we probably would have been pretty unstoppable. So he probably did make the right choice.
I have one last question for you here. You mentioned you, after getting cast, you've watched as many Traitor seasons as you could get your hands on. Which season was your favorite?
Oh my God, that's such a hard question.
It is.
I really enjoy the UK seasons. I believe UK one is the one I'm thinking of. And they're also like super duper emotional and dramatic.
Yes.
And
You nailed it.
that's very much the vibes we're giving on this season. So I'm feeling like that might be my fave.
Oh, you named my favorite season, so I'm very, very excited for the remainder of season two.
Yeah, I'm telling you, like if it's anything like what I can only imagine it is, it's gonna be a good one.
We can't wait to see it all unfold. Rebecca, thank you so much for your time. Sad to see you go, but hey, here's fingers crossed, hoping you get a second chance elsewhere or back on the show. Who knows?
That would be pretty cool, huh? Cross those fingers,
It will be.
guys.
All right. Thank you, Rebecca. Take care.
See ya.
Bye.